Kings chapter 6 this morning is our text for today. And if you'd like to turn there, we will follow those verses that I read earlier and go a little bit further beyond that. This summer, I think I'll spend a little bit of time with Elijah and Elisha. I really wanted to do the competition there on Mount Carmel, but I wanted a little shorter message for today with everything else we had going on, so we may come to that one a little bit later this summer at some point here. We will see. But for this morning, I want to look at this story with Elisha. After my junior year of college, I had the opportunity to go on a mission trip with the university. That would actually be one of the first mission trips I went on, at least out of the country. I did something smaller previous, but we spent a month there in the Cayman Islands, and if you're familiar with them, you may know that there are 3 islands there, and we ran a vacation Bible school on each of the 3 islands. And we worked with local churches on each island. We spent a little extra time on what's called Little Cayman, and it was a very little island, something like a mile long by 5 miles, or mile wide by 5 miles long, something like that. And we did some maintenance on a building there and some painting and that type of thing. But being that we were there, it was during the month of July, as a matter of fact. There in, this would have been 2002, if I have my years correctly, figured out correctly there. We would start very early in the morning because it could get very hot. Now, we've had some heat here, but down in those islands, it could be sweltering. And so we would start very early in the morning, so we did not work in the afternoon heat. Now, these islands are beautiful. They're very small. As a matter of fact, while we were there, the missionaries wanted to take us to do some swimming and snorkeling, and it was absolutely stunning to see what we see there. One time, they took us on Little Cayman, and we parked, and there was some type of concrete pad, and I don't know if they used so a boat could pull up to it and offload some things or what it was, but this concrete pad sat maybe 6 to 8 feet, I would guess, above the water. And below it was 50 feet of crystal clear water. You could see right to the bottom, no trouble at all. We enjoyed swimming there, swimming out to the reefs a little bit with the snorkels and that type of thing. But during that time, one of the members of our team accidentally dropped a mask and snorkel into 50 feet of crystal clear water, and we watched as it just went whoosh, right to the bottom down there. And I could see it easily, and the missionary's wife was aware of what had happened, and she told us, don't worry about it, that's too far for you to swim down there and get it, don't worry about it, okay? And I had 2 thoughts. One, I kind of felt bad, because here we are, and we want to be a blessing to this missionary, and so to have lost some of their equipment, I felt a little bit bad about this. It wasn't me, but still, I don't even know who it was. I didn't want to see them lose it. And secondly, she said it was too far for you to go, right? Now you guys know where this is going, right? Because somebody said you probably can't do that. we guys, maybe eventually we'll mature out of this someday, I don't know, but, we get told something like that, and we're immediately challenged by that. So I made a dive into the water, and I probably got down 30 to 35 feet. I don't know, I'm just guessing it. And I realized that this is a long ways down, and I still have to go all the way back up. So I shot back to the surface, gasping for air, and I made it. I still wasn't giving up yet. So I jumped off of that 6 to 8 foot concrete pad, held the mask with one hand, put fins on my feet, got into the water, and I just swam as much as I could with those fins, and I made it all the way to the bottom of that 50 feet, grabbed the mask, grabbed the snorkel, and shot back to the surface as fast as I could, really gasping for air. I got a bloody nose in doing all of that because of the going down there, but I got it, and I was happy to return it for them. Well, as we will find out today, if Elisha were there on the mission trip with us, he might have made that recovery a lot simpler than what I went through that day. Now, I realize we have items that are designed for flotation, and there are certainly things that do float, but there are a lot of things that don't float and go to the bottom of a body of water, like that mask and snorkel. And as we read earlier today, as of no surprise to anybody here, a metal axe head, goes in the water and it sinks. And we're going to see that in this story here this morning. As we look at this story, there's a lot to see here, but I want you to notice God's power in this story. See God's hand in all of this. There's a lot of different things, and we'll bring those things out, and that's fine, but I want you to see God's hand in all of this. I mentioned with a little bit of problems, I would have had these slides for you, but our first point for today that I would have put up there is that there was a building expansion needed, all right? Building expansion needed. That'd be our first point if you want to jot that down. And we read this earlier, but we saw in verse 1 there that the sons of the prophets, they came to Elisha, and they said to him that the place where we dwell is too strait for us. Now, I'll explain that in just a second. But Elisha apparently has a training school or training grounds, some type of campus, if you will, all right? A place where he could take care of these prophets and work with them. Based off of what we are seeing here and read here, it seems like this is doing well. It was flourishing, and they needed more space. And they said it was too strait for us. Now, we might think of a strait as a narrow passageway. We might use it in that term. And that's kind of the idea of what we're getting at here, that the conditions had become too cramped. It had become too small. They needed more space, is the bottom line. Conditions were full. So in order to accommodate this, one of the prophets suggested that they go down to the Jordan, and they each get a log so that they can bring wood back and they can do some construction. Now, again, a whole different day, right? In our day, we could call Curtis Lumber around the corner from here and say, deliver us some lumber, and we can have 2x4s, 2x6s, or whatever we need brought right to us. But they can't do that in that day. Whole different ballgame. So they say, we should do this. Elisha agrees, and he says, you guys go ahead, you head down to the water, and you do exactly what that is, what you called for. So the plan is in place. These men are going to go down. They're going to get the wood that they need. They're going to bring it back so they can construct a bigger campus there, we could say. However, if you noticed it when we read, verse number 3, one of the servants or one of the individuals there said, hey, would you be willing to go with us, Elisha? Would you come down with us to the water here? Now, maybe it was an understanding that Elisha wasn't going to be fit to be able to cut down trees or help in that way. We're not told exactly why he asked for this. We're going to see why in the end. But he asked for Elisha to come. Maybe they just wanted his company. Maybe they just thought it would be good to have our leader there and help us out, encourage us along. We'd like to have Elisha with us. And in the end of verse 3, Elisha says, okay, I'll go. I will go with you. I will head down to the water. So our first point, we could say, is building expansion needed. Our second point for today is job site trouble, all right? I don't know about you, but maybe you've been on a job site and you've had some trouble. Things don't always go like they're supposed to go in the construction world, right? There just always seems to be something that doesn't work out exactly how we planned it. We find this when we go on our mission trips and we have what we think is a good plan, and then we get thrown some type of curveball. And fortunately, our guys are great. They figure it all out. That's no problem. But something comes up. In this case, we could say it was some equipment trouble. We've had that on mission trips as well, where the equipment doesn't work like we think, and so we have to figure that out. So they go to this job site. They are ready to work, and notice that this is all very ordinary stuff at this point, all right? Not that this would necessarily happen in every person's life, but it seems like at some point we understand that maybe a church, a business, a family, a ministry might outgrow their current location and they need more stuff, right? That's something we can identify with as a church, as we've talked about the possibility of needing more space even here. I looked at those 63 children running around here and thinking, boy, they could use more space here at our church for that. It's not quite as easy as going down to the river here and chopping down logs and building in our day and age, I realize that. But we understand that. And in our current culture, we may have an addition put onto a house. We may buy land and build a bigger home. For some people, might do that. We can hire a builder and get items delivered. If you were to decide to just go down by a river and cut down a tree, you'd probably find yourself in a world of trouble, okay? Unless it was on your property, on your own private land. But even that, who knows, okay, with all the things that are out there today. So we understand this. It's fairly ordinary stuff. They are cutting down wood, and in that process, in that day, they are using their modern convenience of an axe, right? I mean, they didn't have a chainsaw. So for all you men that love to run your chainsaw, they didn't have that. They didn't fire their chainsaws up. They had axes, and they were chopping down these trees. Now, an axe was an important piece of equipment for them. Again, much different. Today's world, we have huge machinery that will cut down trees. We had a machine out here this past winter when they were cutting down the trees, and he had these two arms, and you take them and you just put them around a tree, and it had this big saw that would just right through it, and then you just take the tree and spin it and boom, throw it right down on the ground, okay? They didn't have anything like that day. So they have this axe. Verse number 5 again. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried and said, "Alas, master, for it was borrowed." Now, maybe you have chopped wood and you understand chopping. Maybe you've even tried to chop down something with an axe. And so he is swinging hard. And we're not told exactly what happened here, how it broke, but what we know is somehow that axe head comes off of the handle and it goes flying. Thankfully, it didn't hurt anybody from what we have recorded here, but it goes into the river there. It goes into this body of water and it sinks to the bottom, and he can't find this axe head. And maybe it went deep enough. We're not told exactly all that happened here. The Jordan River wasn't the cleanest of rivers, so it's probably hard to see in there. And so there it is at the bottom. Now, I imagine that they had axe heads fly off before, right? And maybe it just tumbled on to the ground. They weren't near water, so they go get it. I imagine they could have easily gone and put a new handle on the axe head if it was findable. The problem was they couldn't see it in the water. They didn't know where it was. It didn't just go in at the very edge where they could just go in and grab it and pick it up. It had gone in deep enough where recovery was not an option. Now, today's world, again, we could send a dive team down there for it. Maybe if you've ever done this, I've had experience with this where you've dropped a tool into water like a screwdriver or a wrench, and you've put a magnet down and boom, pull it back up, something like that. But in that day, they didn't have those options. So the man calls out for Elisha. It's a good thing that he was here. And he explains to him what happened, but he also explains that axe head was borrowed. Now, I don't know about you. Generally, I'm very cautious if I do borrow something from somebody. The last thing I want to do is break somebody else's tool, right? I mean, that's just a terrible feeling when you're borrowing something, and maybe they've even graciously and generously given it to you to use, but then it breaks. Last summer, my two boys decided to take on the project of removing a stump from the ground that's right near the home of my parents. And so they've been chopping away at this stump. And I've joked with them that by, a few years from now, they should have it all gone. And of course, you know what that did for them too, right? All right, so they're motivated to do that. Well, they got out an axe that was my grandfather's and is, I don't even know how many years old, and they were chopping away with that. And can you guess what happened? It broke, all right? Now, fortunately, it was an older axe. It's now my dad's. He was very gracious with all that. He went and bought a new axe, so he's all good with all of that. But I felt bad that things like that happen, and I imagine you understand that. But let me give you a little more perspective on this. One author notes that metal was a very expensive commodity, and this axe head was of great value. As a matter of fact, the author noted that put this in perspective, it would be maybe something along the lines of if you borrowed somebody else's vehicle today, and you went out and crashed their vehicle, destroyed their vehicle, and now they had a vehicle to replace, all right? We probably think of an axe as not that big a deal. We can go down to the local hardware store, the Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever, and you can buy an axe, and probably most people could afford to do that without too much trouble. But now if somebody crashes your vehicle and you have to replace that, I realize we have insurance, but take that out of the equation for a second, all of a sudden that's a whole different perspective on that. So this man is panicking a little bit. He's distraught over the fact that this axe is gone. So our third point would be this: water recovery, or a water recovery, all right? So let's pick up in verse number 6. We haven't read that far. So verse 6, and the man of God said, where fell it? And he showed him the place, and he cut down a stick and cast it in thither, and the iron did swim. Therefore said he, take it up to thee, and he put out his hand, and he took it. Aaron took it. So Elisha is here, and now we see why Elisha is here, because they go to Elisha in all of this, and Elisha doesn't seem too concerned with all of this. He says, okay, where did it happen? And so I imagine you can see them standing by the river right there, right? Well, I was swinging right here. I saw it go flying out this way, and then, I don't know. But somewhere out over there, Elisha. It's somewhere over in that region, we at least think. So the man shows him, and Elisha takes a stick off the tree, and he throws it in the water. Now, I wonder what that man was thinking. Maybe he was thinking, all right, Elisha's going to throw this in the water, and it's going to land in the water, and Elisha's going to say, okay, is it about where that stick is floating right now? Is that the right location? I don't know what he was thinking would happen here. Maybe he had an idea of what Elisha could do, but he throws the stick into the water, and as that stick is floating in the water, the next thing you see, or the next thing he sees, is that metal axe head, all right, the iron, as it says here, is floating in the water. And then Elisha looks at him and says, all right, go ahead and grab it. Now, I imagine this guy is probably jaw on the floor here, right, on the ground. Like, how did that all happen, right? Elisha, yeah, just go grab it. And so they go, they get it, they pick it up, he takes it, and it's all set. It takes there. So the man does that. And so we look at this little story here today, and we say, why this story? As I referenced earlier, we see the power of God on display in all of this. And that is what I want you to see here, God's power even in the midst of that. But there are maybe some other lessons we can learn in here too. Maybe you can see the compassion of Elisha on his men, right? And we can see how he cared for his men. Maybe that'd be a lesson there. Maybe on a more lighter note, we could say a lesson we learn here, especially for you men, is to keep your tools in good working order, right? So that they don't break. Maybe some would say, well, make sure you get competent help so that you can not have problems like this. Maybe someone could say, well, don't build on waterfront property, all right, and chop down logs there because you're going to have that problem, okay? But I suggest that what we want to see here, we can learn about God. May I say to you that we can learn here that God is interested and aware of the things going on in our lives. He is interested and cares about what is happening in the day-to-day of our lives. Right? This was a big deal for this guy. He was all worried about the fact that here he had borrowed this axe, and now I'm not going to be able to take care of it. I'm not going to be able to fix this. And yet, God comes in through Elisha and works in all of that. We do see God's power in all of this. And I want you to understand that the power of God that raised that iron axe head from the bottom of the river and had it there floating on the water is the same God that is alive and working today. He is the same God that can change things in America, as we talked about last week. See, my hope, as I said last week, is in the gospel, is in the Lord, and I believe that God can still work in our country, as we talked about that last week, because God is an all-powerful God, a God that can bring an iron axe head to the surface of the water. So I want you to see the power of God. I want you to understand that God cares for you. He's watching over you. He's interested even in the details of your life. Let me bring one other thing. I don't want to press this too far, but we see even a little picture of redemption here. You see, the young man has a debt that he cannot pay. He has no way to remedy this situation. He owes an axe head. It was way too expensive for him. He had no way of retrieving it. He is unable to remedy the situation of himself. Yet Elisha comes, and Elisha comes in the power of the Lord, of course, and secures the axe head and allowing him to pay the debt that he had through that, what happened there. Now, I don't want to press that too far and try to make everything fit. But you can see the story there, right? Where God is coming to the rescue. And we are the same today. We need God to come to our rescue in order to redeem us. It was God that had redeemed Israel from Egypt and brought them out of bondage. And God is the God that redeems sinful mankind today, taking them away from their bondage of sin, the debt that they cannot pay, in order to be freed from it. So this morning, I wanted to give you this story here today from Elisha, and I want you to see God at work in all of this and his incredible power. We serve a great and powerful God. This story is a simple illustration of that. And may we marvel at our God, rejoice at our God, and revel in who he is. Shall we pray? Father, thank you for your incredible power, which was put on display in this scenario. Lord, this situation, something that we could maybe identify with, having something that we had borrowed and something go wrong and then having to take care of it. Maybe we could identify with that. Maybe we could identify with something going to the bottom of the water. Maybe somebody has lost items and they understand that when it goes down, it can't necessarily be retrieved. But yet you showed yourself strong and you showed yourself powerful in all of this. Thank you for your care for this man and how you used Elisha and your power to take care of this situation. I pray this now in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, again, I want you to marvel at God.
My name's Pastor Matt, and I just want to say thank you for watching this Sunday morning's message. If you have any questions about what you heard, feel free to give us a call. Feel free to reach out to us on email or on our Facebook page. You also can get more information about the church at adirondackbaptist.com. We hope to see you soon.